speaker, may mag-record ko sa'yo. Right. So we have Jemrei Louis C. Alberto. He is a first-year student from the UP College of Architecture, majoring in architecture. He is currently a member of the UP Architecture Forum and has previously served as a research officer in several student-led organizations dating back to his high school years. He has a growing passion for urban planning and green architecture and consequently placed in the top 5 during this year's Arkwiz, an architectural quiz bee that took place in UP Diliman last May 15. Di ba sa bio note niya, ilang beses na banggit yung architecture, no? So I think we have an idea of what he's going to talk about today. Palakpakan natin si Jen.
Hello. Ring ba? Okay. So a few days ago, while I was scrolling through my Twitter feed, I came across this meme. Now, you guys can go read this meme, pero when I saw this meme, it had me thinking, bakit nga ba ayaw natin sa Manila? Bakit nga ba ang pangit ng Manila sa paningin natin? Pero before I answer that question, I want to ask you guys something muna. So guys, sino dito sa inyo ang nagko-commute? Raise your hands. O diba marami? I feel like regardless of whether or not you guys commute, I think we're all aware na most of the UP student population either commutes or uses public transportation. And the reason why I bring this up is because kayo man nagko-commute, you guys are familiar with the landscape and urban planning of Manila. Ako kasi I've only been commuting for the past year. Pero in the 6 months that I've been commuting, the one thing that I realized was that grabe, ang pangit talaga ng Manila. And you guys are all witnesses of this. Every time you leave this classroom to go home, whether or not you guys use public transportation or private transportation, makikita niyo to. The degradation, the pollution, the bad urban planning, and the depressing landscape that is Manila. We live in a concrete jungle, kumbaga. But what if I told you guys na this doesn't have to be the case? And the Manila that we want for the future is still very much possible. So right now, I ask you guys to close your eyes, and envision the Manila that you want for the future. Envision a cityscape where nature thrives, sustainability reigns, streets are walkable, and every single corner you turn is clean. Alright guys, open your eyes. So right now, I am showing you guys a series of images of a reimagined Manila. A Manila with better urban planning, more green spaces, and an increased focus on sustainability. I'm sure that this is the Manila that you guys had in mind. Imagine Manila as an urban oasis with lush green gardens and parks, and tree-lined streets that grace every corner of the city you walk. In this new Manila, clean and fresh air would permeate our atmosphere and provide relief from the polluted air that we breathe now. And I feel like this is a perfect segue to my topic for today. What if Manila was more green? But before I answer this question, let's talk about the real Manila. The Manila that you guys are familiar with. I think most of you guys know how bad the air pollution and water pollution and land pollution as well is in Manila. If you want to be specific, according to the World Health Organization, the PM 2.5 levels in Manila is 1.6 times more than what they recommend. That's healthy for us. Now this is very technical and it's very hard to explain, and you guys might ask, Jam, what the hell is this? But basically, this is a measure of the tiny particles in the air that we breathe. So in other words, this is bad. In fact, it's so bad that according to Greenpeace, tens of thousands of deaths in Manila have been correlated to this air pollution. Next, water pollution. Did you guys know that 750,000 tons of plastic is dumped into Manila Bay every year? Land waste is rarely ever collected in the poorest communities. So where do they have to throw their trash? Where else can they throw their trash but the ocean? Next is poor urban planning. You guys are also witnesses to this. There is a glaring lack of walkable areas in Manila. And a side effect of this is overcrowding in the poorest settlements, in the tenements. It leads to city congestion, and it leads to this phenomenon called discriminatory zoning, where the poor and the less fortunate are deliberately outcast from society, and they're deprived of basic needs such as good urban planning and green spaces. And lastly, a lack of green spaces. I don't think we need any data to prove this. If you guys look around you, so we're not here in UP, but outside of UP, mapapansin ninyo na we really lack green spaces. Every walk you take outside is an endless path of cement and asphalt. But if you guys want facts, here's a fact. Only 0.03% of Manila's land is used as green space. 0.03%. That's not even 1%. Not even a tenth of that. And this lack of green space, it only exacerbates the heat and the oppressive humidity that we Filipinos already experience. Next, let's talk about how Manila's residents are affected by this. To no one's surprise, the poorest of the poor are the ones who are most affected by this. They lack clean water, proper waste disposal, they experience overcrowding, and lastly, they have poor sanitation in their living areas. Their places are virtually unlivable. This also leads to a wider disparity between the rich and the poor. If you guys notice, only certain areas, certain bubbles in Manila have access to good urban planning and green spaces. Places like BGC, places like Alabang. But if you go to the sitios, to the barrios, and to the barangays, they lack this. This turns urban planning into something that is essentially anti-poor. It turns into a weapon that excludes the poor and the less fortunate from getting access to things like urban planning. And lastly, it makes it tougher for the average Filipino to get around. Case in point, kaya ninyo lakaran UP hanggang pop-up. Hindi kaya, diba? And I think this is a perfect example of how bad the urban planning is in Manila. But what can we do? What can we do to make Manila more green? The first is that urban planning has to be for all. Urban planning shouldn't be only for the rich, or for the people who live in BGC and Alabang and all these wealthy places. The government must take a greater effort into providing urban planning for even the less affluent. Next is more green spaces. The government needs to be more intentional and devote green spaces intentionally for when they plan our cities. And even in areas such as the sitios and barrios that I talked about earlier, the less affluent areas, they need to have access to urban spaces as well. Because it's not something that's anti-poor, it's something that every single one of us deserves. And lastly, is a comprehensive national urban policy. We learned in architecture that our country currently lacks an urban policy that fosters sustainable urbanization. And because of this, urbanization is overly concentrated in Metro Manila. This leaves secondary urban places to be underdeveloped. Having a national urban policy also aids and gives guides to architects and designers when they design buildings that could be potentially harmful to our environment. So, going back to what I showed you guys earlier, this is the Manila we want for the future. A more livable city. A city that is environmentally friendly and disaster resilient. And lastly, a city that is not anti-poor and is inclusive for all. I know that you guys think that this dream of ours is far from the reality that we live in. But as crazy as it sounds, this future that we want for Manila is still very much in our hands. The future you guys want for Manila, that all of us want for Manila, is still very much alive. Thank you for listening.
Okay, salamat. Okay,